The man sat alone inside a small metal ship, the sound of engines humming around him. The air inside was heavy, not because of the machine but because of the paper in his hand. It was not a long letter, only a few lines, yet the words burned. His mind, again and again, he had been given an order. His leaders trusted him. They told him to go to a far-off alien world, to meet a poor widow and her daughter, and to sell them. Sell them like objects, like broken tools no one wanted. The man was no stranger to missions. He had traveled across worlds, carried messages, guarded supplies, even hunted dangerous beasts. But this task was different. This task felt dark. This was not war, not duty, not even trade. This was betrayal of life itself. He read the order once more. His hand shook. The words were clear. Deliver the alien widow and her daughter to the buyer. Payment will be sent after delivery. No reason was given, no mercy written. The ship landed with a soft thud on the alien soil. He stepped out, the air colder than he expected. The sky above was gray, the ground covered with dry cracks as if the world itself was starving. In the distance he saw small huts made of stone and broken wood. He walked slowly, his boots pressing into the dust. Children peeked from behind walls, thin faces with hollow eyes. They did not laugh, they did not play. They only watched him with silence. It was the silence of hunger, of fear. At last he reached the house he was sent to. It was smaller than the rest, leaning to one side. The roof was patched with scraps of metal. The door hung weakly from its frame. He knocked once and the sound echoed too loud. From inside came a soft voice, the voice of someone tired of life. The door opened, and she appeared, the alien widow, her skin pale with strange patterns, her eyes large and silver, her body thin, her arms weak. She looked like a candle about to burn out. Beside her stood a small figure, her daughter. The girl's eyes were wide, but not with wonder. They were wide with fear. She held her mother's hand tightly as if letting go would mean being lost forever. The man felt his chest tighten. He was sent here to see them as items, but what he saw were people, fragile yet alive. "Who are you?" the widow asked in a low voice. He opened his mouth, but the words stayed stuck in his throat. He was supposed to say, "I am here for business." But the truth tasted bitter, so he only said, "I was sent to see you." The widow's eyes lowered, as if she already knew, as if she had faced men like him before. Her shoulders sank and she let him enter. Inside the house was nothing but emptiness. A broken chair, a cracked bowl, a blanket that could not keep out the cold. The air smelled of dust. The man looked around and asked himself, why would anyone want to buy them? They had nothing. They were nothing in the eyes of the powerful. Yet someone had chosen them, chosen to take them away. The daughter stepped closer to him. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Will you take us away?" The question hit him harder than any weapon. She did not ask why. She did not ask where. She only asked, "Will you?" Her eyes searched his face for an answer. The man felt heat rise in his chest. His hand crushed the paper order inside his pocket.
He was not ready to answer, not yet. He watched them sit together, mother and child.
Their bodies leaned on each other for strength. He thought of his own mother, long gone. He thought of times when he was weak, and someone had protected him. Silence filled the room, but inside his head, voices screamed, "Do your job." One voice said, "They are only aliens, only names on a page." But another voice louder answered, "They are alive, they are family. They are not yours to sell." He stood in that broken house, torn between order and heart. His ship waited outside. The payment, promised his leaders, expecting him to obey. Yet his soul whispered something else. The widow looked at him again. "If you take us, please, do not let them hurt my daughter." The man's throat ached. He wanted to speak, but no words came. He only nodded, though he knew what that nod might cost him. In that moment, the mission was no longer simple. It was no longer about orders. It was about choice. A dark secret hung over him. But he also saw a fragile light. He had been sent to sell, but deep inside, he already felt the truth. He could not sell them. He could not betray them, not this widow, not this child. And so, the story began, not with money, not with trade, but with a heavy heart and a dangerous secret. The man sat quietly inside the alien widow's house. The walls were thin, the roof bent, and the floor was nothing but cold stone. The silence pressed down heavy as if even the air was afraid to speak. The widow moved slowly, her steps weak. She placed a cracked bowl on the small table in front of him. Inside was only a little water, no food, nothing else, she whispered. "This is all I can offer." He nodded without drinking. His human heart ached. He had eaten well on his ship, but here they had almost nothing. He looked at the child, her silver eyes watching him. She hugged her knees close to her chest, afraid of every sound. The silence of the house was not like peace. It was the silence of hunger, of pain, of waiting for something terrible. The man felt as if he had stepped into a graveyard of dreams. He tried to speak, to ask questions. "How long have you lived like this?" The widow lowered her gaze. "Since my husband died in the war. They took everything from us. The home, the fields, even the tools. We were left with only this broken shelter. No one helps us. No one dares." Her voice cracked as she spoke. But no tears came. Perhaps because she had already cried them all in the past. The man felt his fists tighten. His leaders had told him nothing of this. To them, this widow and her child were only a transaction. But here, in this house of silence, he saw the truth. They were prisoners of despair. The little girl finally spoke, her voice soft. "Mother says the stars used to be beautiful. She says Father told her stories about them, but I have never seen them. The sky is always gray here." Her words were small, but they stabbed the man's heart. He had seen the stars countless times through the windows of his ship, but for this child, the stars were only a story, a dream. The silence returned again, heavier than before. The man stood and walked to the door. He opened it and looked outside. The village was lifeless. People moved like shadows, their faces pale, no laughter, no songs. It was as if the whole place had forgotten how to live. He turned back and asked, "Why do the people not speak? Why does no one help you?" The widow sighed. "Because they are afraid. Afraid of the ones who hold power. Afraid of being punished. We are alone, and they are silent, just as we are." The man looked at her, then at the little girl. Silence, fear, and hunger had chained this family. But chains could be broken, he knew it deep inside. He sat again and studied them. His mission shouted in his mind. Sell them. Deliver them. Finish the task. But the silence of this house told a different story. It whispered, "Protect them. Save them. Give them a chance." The girl leaned forward, her thin arms shaking. "Mister, do you have a family?" The question froze him. He had not thought of family in years. His parents long dead, no wife, no children. His life had been missions, orders, and empty nights. "No," he said softly. "I do not." The girl tilted her head, her silver eyes searching his face. "Then maybe you can be ours." Her words fell into the silence like a stone into water. The widow's eyes widened. She pulled her daughter close, whispering, "Do not say such things." But the girl looked at him again with hope shining through her fear. The man felt his throat tighten. A warmth spread through his chest. He had come here to take them away, yet they were offering him something he had lost long ago. A family. The silence of the house was broken now, not by sound, but by meaning. He understood something dangerous. If he obeyed his mission, he would destroy them. If he defied it, he might destroy himself. Night fell outside, gray turning into black. The man stayed in the house listening to the quiet breathing of the widow and her child as they slept. He could not sleep. His mind burned with the weight of choice. He thought of the paper order still, crushed in his pocket. He could deliver them tomorrow and his life would remain safe. He would be paid, he would be praised. But every time he looked at the child's small body curled beside her mother, his heart screamed, no. The silence of the house grew louder in the dark, louder than any war drum, louder than any command. It spoke to him clearer than his leaders ever had. It told him that some orders were meant to be broken. The man closed his eyes, and in that silence he made a vow. He did not say it out loud, but his heart spoke it. I will not sell them. I will not betray them. Not this widow. Not this child. The silence of the house had given him an answer, and that answer would change everything. The morning light crept into the broken house through cracks in the roof. The man had not slept. His eyes were open the whole night, his mind heavy with the choice he had made in silence. The widow stirred first, her weak arms pulling the blanket tighter around her daughter. The child slowly blinked awake. Her silver eyes looked around the room before resting on him. She did not look away, not even for a moment. There was something about those eyes. They were not like the eyes of soldiers he had faced in battle, not like the eyes of traders hungry for coins. These were the eyes of someone who had lost everything yet still held on to hope. The girl tilted her head slightly, her voice soft, almost fragile. You didn't leave. The man's lips pressed together. He wanted to answer but found no words. In truth, he had thought about leaving during the night, thought about taking his ship and flying away to escape the storm his decision would bring. But every time he looked at her face, he stayed. The widow sat up slowly. Why are you still here? She asked with suspicion. Men who come with papers never stay. They take what they came for and then they go. The man said nothing. His hand touched the crushed order still hidden in his pocket. The words on that paper felt like poison. Now the girl stood, her bare feet touching the cold floor. She walked closer to him. Her silver eyes shone in the dim light. You look sad, she whispered. He blinked, surprised. Soldiers had called him cruel. Traders had called him cold, but never had anyone said he looked sad, and never had a child spoken it so gently. I am not sad, he said quickly, though he knew it was a lie. The girl tilted her head again. Your eyes are heavy, like my mother's, like mine. Her words cut deep. She was too young to speak like that, too young to carry the weight of sorrow. Yet her eyes told the truth. The silence of this world had taught her things no child should know. He looked away, but her gaze pulled him back. Those eyes asked questions he was afraid to answer. They asked, will you hurt us? Will you save us? Who are you really? The widow reached for her daughter. Do not trouble him, she said softly. But the girl shook her head, refusing to move. She leaned closer to him. Her small hand touched his arm. Her fingers were thin, trembling, but warm. Are you going to take us away? She asked again. The man's chest tightened. The same question from yesterday. The same question that had shaken him. He swallowed hard, his voice low. Not like they want. The widow's head turned sharply. What do you mean? He looked at both of them, his voice steady now. I was sent here with orders, orders to deliver you, orders to sell you. The widow gasped, her hand covering her mouth, her silver eyes filled with fear. But the girl did not flinch. She only stared deeper into his face, her eyes wide, searching for the truth behind his words. And will you? She asked. He shook his head slowly. No, I will not. The silence in the room was broken. The widow trembled, not knowing whether to trust him, but the girl's eyes softened. She believed him, even when logic warned her not to. Why? The widow whispered. Why would you betray your own kind for us? The man thought for a long moment, his gaze locked with the child's eyes. Because her eyes do not lie, he said quietly. They remind me of something I lost long ago. The widow frowned, confused, but the girl smiled faintly. For the first time, it was small, weak, but it was real. That smile struck him harder than any battle wound. In her eyes, he saw something dangerous, trust. And he knew once he accepted it, there would be no turning back. The girl sat down beside him, as if she had already decided. Then you will be our protector, she said, not as a question but as a truth. The man's heart pounded. Protector. The word felt heavy. Heavier than soldier. Heavier than traitor. It was not an order. It was a promise. The widow spoke again, her voice shaky. You don't understand what this means. If you refuse your orders, they will come for you, for us. They will not forgive betrayal. He nodded. I know. Then why do this? He glanced once more at the girl's eyes, shining like fragile stars in the dark house. Because some things are worth the cost. The widow looked down, her face pale. She did not argue further, but the man knew her fear was real, and her doubt strong. The girl leaned her head against his arm, her small voice whispered, Then we are not alone anymore. The man closed his eyes, letting her words sink into him. He had lived his whole life following orders, but in this small house with these silver eyes on him, he felt something new, something alive, something human. The silence of the world outside still lingered, but inside, the child's eyes had broken it. Her gaze had created a bond stronger than law, stronger than command, and in that bond he found his path. He would not sell them. He would not abandon them. He would fight for them, even if it meant standing against the world. Because once you look into eyes that carry hope, you cannot turn away. You cannot betray them. The man sat by the door as night fell again. His ship rested in the distance, its metal frame glowing faintly under the pale moonlight. Inside his pocket, the crumpled order still waited, its words sharp as knives. Deliver the alien widow and her daughter, but he had already made his choice. He could not do it, he would not. The widow watched him from across the room, her silver eyes filled with worry. Her hands trembled as she mended the torn blanket for her daughter. You should go, she whispered. If you stay, they will come for you, and when they come, they will destroy us all. Her words were true. He knew it. Yet his feet refused to move. He was no longer a messenger of orders. He was something else now, something heavier. The girl leaned against him, her small head resting on his arm. Her quiet voice cut through the silence. You are not going to sell us. He nodded slowly. No, I am not. The widow's face hardened. Do you understand what that means? They will call you a traitor. They will hunt you. I know, he replied. But better to be hunted than to live with shame. He pulled the order from his pocket, unfolded it one last time. The letters glared up at him, cold and merciless. He held it over the small fire in the corner. The flames licked the paper hungrily, the black ash curled, and soon nothing remained. The widow gasped, What have you done? I broke the chain, he said simply, his voice steady. No one owns you anymore, no one will take you while I stand. For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire. The widow stared at him, torn between fear and hope. The girl, however, smiled, a small, fragile smile, but brighter than anything he had seen on this broken world. But peace did not last long. A sound echoed outside, the growl of engines. The man stiffened. He knew that sound too well. The hunters were here, quicker than he expected. The widow grabbed her daughter, fear rushing into her eyes. It's them, she whispered. They have come for us. The man stood, his body tense. Stay inside, he ordered. His voice was low but strong. The soldier in him had awakened, but this time not for war, this time for family. He stepped outside. The cold night bit his skin. In the distance he saw shadows moving, lights flashing. A group of figures was marching toward the village, armored and armed. His mind raced. He had no army, no weapons strong enough. He had only his courage and his choice. But sometimes courage was stronger than steel. He returned inside, the widow's. Hands clutched his sleeve. Run, she begged. Take your ship and go. Leave us. It is the only way you will survive. He shook his head firmly. If I run, they will take you. If I stay, maybe I can stop them. The girl stood in front of him, her silver eyes glowing in the dim firelight. You promised, she whispered. You promised you would not let them hurt us. The man knelt, meeting her eyes. And I will keep that promise, he said, no matter what. The widow's tears finally broke free. She turned her face away, whispering prayers to the silent. Night, the man searched the room. His eyes fell on the old tools lying in the corner. A broken spear, a rusted blade, scraps of metal. He gathered what he could, his hands steady though his heart thundered. The hunters were closer now. Their voices carried through the air, cruel, laughter echoing like wolves on the hunt. They shouted orders, demanding the widow's name, demanding the child. The man stood at the doorway, his figure blocking the weak house behind him. His voice rang out across the night. You will not have them. The hunters stopped, surprised. Their leader stepped forward, a tall figure with armor shining. Who are you to defy us? Step aside, human, this is not your fight. The man's grip tightened on the rusted blade, his voice cold. It is my fight now. The hunters laughed, but there was unease in their eyes. For they saw not a traitor, not a weak man, but someone ready to stand. Someone who had already chosen death over betrayal. Inside the house, the widow held her daughter close, her heart raced. She had seen many men before, all of them cruel, none of them willing to bleed for her. Yet here was a stranger, standing in front of her door like a shield. The man took a deep breath. He knew he might not survive the night, but he also knew one truth. If he fell, he would fall as a protector, not a betrayer. The first clash came quick. A hunter charged, weapon raised. The man moved fast, his blade meeting the strike. Sparks flew in the dark. The sound echoed across the silent village. He pushed the hunter back, his muscles burning. He had fought battles before, but this was different. This was not for orders, not for victory. This was for the promise in a child's eyes. More hunters stepped forward, circling him. Their weapons gleamed, but his stance did not break. He stood tall, his shadow stretching across the widow's home. Behind him, the girl whispered through the cracks of the door, "You can win, her." Words fueled him. His heart roared and his arm swung harder. His will became his weapon, stronger than the rusted blade he held. The night was filled with the sound of war, the cries of hunters, the clash of steel. And in that chaos, one truth shone clear. He had broken the order. He had chosen family over command, and once such a choice is made, there is no going back. The night of the battle had passed. The man's arms were bruised, his clothes torn, his rusted blade was broken, yet he still stood, and the hunters lay scattered on the cold ground. The widow and her daughter stepped out of the house slowly. The child's silver eyes glowed in the moonlight. She rushed to him, her small hands grabbing his arm. "You are hurt," she whispered. He forced a smile, shaking his head. "Only a little." But inside, his body burned with pain. Still, the warmth in the girl's eyes made the pain feel lighter. The widow looked at him with trembling lips. "Why would you risk everything for us?" She asked softly. "You could have walked away. You could have lived safe." The man's voice was calm. "Because walking away would have killed me more than their blades. Because you are no longer strangers to me." The widow's eyes widened. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she looked at her daughter, who still clung to him like he was the last piece of safety in the universe. From that night on, things began to change. The man started fixing their broken home. He used pieces of metal from the hunter's wrecked equipment. His hands were rough, but his work was steady. Soon the roof no longer leaked. The walls stood stronger, and the cold air no longer bit so deep. He brought food from his ship, dried rations that tasted like dust to him, but felt like a feast to the widow and her daughter. For the first time in years, the girl ate until she was full. She laughed, a sound so small yet so bright that even the widow's tired face softened. Each day, he hunted in the forests, bringing back strange alien fruits and animals. He taught the girl how to set small traps, how to light a fire. She followed him everywhere, her silver eyes wide with curiosity. "You fight like a soldier," she told him one evening, "but you fix roofs like a father." The words struck his heart. He looked at her and asked, Do you want me to be your father? She smiled shyly and nodded. I already decided. The widow overheard and froze. Her heart pulled in two directions. She was afraid to trust, afraid to believe. Yet every day she watched the man treat her daughter with kindness she had not seen in years. Every day her fear weakened a little more. One night as the fire crackled, the widow spoke in a low voice. You have given us more than anyone else ever has, but you know they will come again. More hunters, more soldiers, stronger ones. They will not stop until they take us. The man looked into the flames, his face hard. Then I will fight again, and I will keep fighting until they understand. This family is mine now. The widow's chest tightened. She had lost her husband to war. She had lost her home to greed. But in this stranger, this human, she saw something she thought was gone forever. Protection. As days turned into weeks, the village people began to notice. They whispered about the human who lived with the widow and her child. Some mocked, some stayed silent, but some began to hope. For if one man could stand against hunters, maybe others could too. But hope was dangerous. Hope attracted enemies, and soon, rumors reached the ears of powerful traders. They learned of the man who had broken orders, the man who had burned a contract and fought against his own kind. One evening, the widow returned from the well, her face pale. They know, she whispered to him. The traders know you refused. They are sending more, not just hunters this time, but soldiers. The man stood tall, his jaws set. He looked at her, then at the child who clutched her mother's dress. Then we will be ready, he said firmly. We are not running, not anymore. The widow's voice shook. But why? You owe us nothing. You could leave now and be safe. He stepped closer, his hand resting gently on the girl's head, his voice deep, unshakable. Because I chose you. I chose her. You are my family now. Family is not something you sell. Family is something you fight for. The widow's tears fell, not from fear this time, but from something long forgotten. Trust. That night, they sat together by the fire. Not as strangers, not as captor and victims, but as something new. The girl leaned against him, whispering, Promise me you will never leave. The man looked down at her silver eyes, shining with both hope and fear. I promise, he said, his voice carrying the weight of a vow stronger than any order. And in that moment, the poor widow and her daughter were no longer just survivors. They were no longer alone. They were a family, a fragile family, yes, but one forged in fire and choice. Yet outside their home, shadows moved, enemies gathered, preparing to strike. Their new family was strong in spirit, but the storm ahead was darker than anything they had faced before. The man knew it. The widow feared it. The girl felt it. But none of them would turn back now, for he had chosen them, and they had chosen him. And once such a bond is made, it cannot be broken, not by orders, not by soldiers, not by the galaxy itself. The night was restless. The wind carried strange sounds across the dry land. The man did not sleep. He stood at the doorway, watching the horizon, waiting. At dawn, the danger came. Dust rose in the distance. Engines roared. The widow clutched her daughter close, her silver eyes wide with fear. They are here, she whispered. The man's heart beat heavy. He had known this moment would come, but still it burned inside him. This was not a handful of hunters like before. This was an army, soldiers trained and armed, sent to drag the widow and her daughter away. Quick, he said firmly. We cannot stay. They will burn this village to the ground if they do not find you. The widow trembled. Where can we go? There is nowhere safe. There is always somewhere, he answered, grabbing the small pack he had prepared. He had food, water, and a map of the wild lands beyond the villages. It was not much, but it was enough to keep them moving. He took the widow's hand, then the girl's. His grip strong. Stay close to me. Do not look back. The three slipped out through the back of the house, running through narrow alleys. The village was waking, people staring in silence as they passed. None dared to speak. None dared to help. But their eyes followed with fear and a spark of pity. Behind them the soldiers arrived. Their boots thundered like drums, their voices shouted orders. "Find them!" The widow and her child, the traitor with them. The chase had begun. The man led them through the forest beyond the village. The trees were tall, their twisted branches blocking out much of the light. The ground was rough, covered in roots and stones. The widow stumbled, but he pulled her forward, never letting her fall. The girl's breath came in quick gasps, yet her small legs kept moving. She trusted him completely, her silver eyes fixed only on his back. Voices echoed through the forest. Soldiers crashing through, their weapons clanging. Their searchlights cut across the trees, beams of light hunting like sharp blades. The man stopped at a fallen tree, his mind racing. He had to think like a soldier again. "Climb," he whispered to the widow and child, helping them scramble. "Over." He stayed low, covering their tracks with broken branches. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. The soldiers grew closer, their steps heavy, their light sweeping the forest floor. One beam came close, too close. The girl froze, her small body trembling. The man placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. "Breathe," he whispered. "Do not move." The beam passed. The soldiers marched on, their voices fading for now. They moved again, deeper into the forest. The hours stretched long. The sun climbed, then began to fall. Still they did not stop. The man knew if they slowed, they would be caught. By nightfall, they reached the edge of the desert. A wide land of red sand and sharp rocks stretched before them. The widow collapsed to her knees, her body weak. "We cannot cross," she said. "It will kill us before the soldiers do." The man knelt beside her, his voice strong but gentle. "You must believe. The desert is cruel, yes, but we can survive it together. I will guide you." The girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "He promised," she whispered. "He will not let us die." The widow looked at the man, at her daughter, and though her body shook, she nodded. They entered the desert. The air was dry, the wind sharp. Their footprints trailed behind them like scars. The man carried the girl. When her legs grew too weak, his shoulders ached, but he did not stop. At night they hid under rocks. The man lit no fire, knowing the glow would betray them. They ate in silence, shared sips of water, their bodies tired, but their hearts still moving forward. But the soldiers did not give up. Their engines roared across the desert, their machines leaving lines in the sand. They searched day and night, their numbers greater, their weapons stronger. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, they heard the sound closer than ever. The man's eyes hardened. They are near, too near. He pushed the widow and the girl into a narrow canyon. The walls rose high, shadows hiding them. "Stay here," he whispered. "No matter what happens, do not come out until I call." The girl grabbed his hand, her silver eyes shining with fear. "Don't leave," she begged. He knelt, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "I will never leave, but I must keep them away from you." She nodded, tears glistening. Her small voice whispered, "Come back." He stood, gripping the weapon he had crafted from scraps. His figure disappeared into the shadows. The widow held her daughter tight, listening to the sound of soldiers drawing near. The desert night echoed with boots and shouts. Then came the clash, steel against steel, cries of rage, the roar of a man standing alone against many. The widow closed her eyes, whispering a prayer. The girl did not look away. Her silver eyes glistened, staring into the dark, waiting for the man who had promised never to abandon them. The chase was not over. The night was still long, and the fight for family had only just begun. The canyon walls echoed with the sounds of battle. The man fought like a storm, his blade clashing against soldier steel. Dust rose around him, every strike shaking the ground. The widow held her daughter deeper in the shadows, her body trembling. She prayed the man would return, but each cry from the battlefield tore her heart apart. The girl, however, did not close her eyes. Her silver gaze never wavered. She whispered softly, "He will win," he promised. The fight dragged on. The man's arms burned, his breath heavy, yet he did not fall. Every time his body begged him to stop, he saw the child's face in his mind, her eyes full of trust, and he rose again. Finally, silence. Only the wind moved through the canyon. The widow dared to peek. She saw him standing, blood on his face, his blade broken but his spirit unbroken. Around him the soldiers lay scattered. He staggered back into the shadows where they hid. The girl rushed to him, throwing her arms around his waist. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would," he said, his voice rough but steady. The widow touched his arm, her eyes wet. "You cannot keep fighting like this. They will send more. You will die." The man shook his head. "I will not die, not while you live, not while she lives." They moved again that night, crossing deeper, into the desert. Their steps slow, their bodies weak, but their hearts stronger than ever. Days passed. Soldiers chased them still. But something began to change. In the villages they crossed, whispers spread of the human who defied orders, who fought an army to protect a widow and her child. Some offered food, some gave shelter, a few even stood guard through the night. The man noticed it. The silence of fear in the world was breaking. Hope was spreading, but hope brought more danger. The traitors grew furious. They sent their best army, armored machines, and powerful weapons. The final hunt began. One evening, as the sun bled red across the sand, the man stopped. His eyes narrowed at the horizon. "They are coming," he said. "This time they will not stop." The widow's heart pounded. "Then we run again?" He shook his head. "No, we fight. Not just for us, but for everyone who is watching." The girl stepped forward, her small hand clutching his. "We are family. We fight together." Her words gave him strength. He turned to the widow. "I cannot do this alone, but with you beside me, with her hope, we can stand." The widow hesitated, fear in her eyes. Yet when she looked at her daughter, when she saw the fire in her gaze, she nodded. "Then we stand." The final battle came at night. The desert lit with fire as soldiers advanced. Their leader shouted, "Give us the widow and her child, and we will spare you, human." The man stepped forward, his shadow tall under the moon. His voice roared across the sand. "They are not yours to take. They are mine to protect. They are my family." The soldiers laughed, but unease spread among them, for his words carried more weight than weapons. The first wave charged. The man fought with fury. His body moved with purpose, his blade an extension of his vow. The widow hurled stones, her fear turning into courage. The girl shouted words of hope, her voice ringing across the battlefield. Something strange happened. Villagers from the nearby lands arrived, drawn by the fire and the cries. They saw the man fighting alone and remembered the whispers of his defiance. Slowly, one by one, they picked up sticks, rocks, and old blades. They joined him. The soldiers faltered. Their power weakened against the rising wave of courage. "Thee too." Man roared, striking down the leader. The enemy ranks broke. Fear spread among them. They fled into the night, leaving the desert silent once more. When the dust settled, the villagers cheered. The widow held her daughter close. Her tears flowing freely, the girl ran to the man, her silver eyes shining like stars. "You did it," she cried. "You saved us." The man knelt, holding her gently, his voice soft. "No, we saved each other." The widow approached, her voice trembling. "You gave us back more than life. You gave us a future." The villagers gathered around, bowing their heads, for they understood now. This was not just about one widow and one child. This was about humanity, about choice, about courage. The man stood tall, his body broken but his spirit alive. He looked at the sky where the stars shone brighter than ever. "I was sent to sell them," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "But instead, I became their family, and in protecting them, I found myself." The widow reached for his hand, the girl held the other. Together they stood, no longer alone, no longer weak, but a family forged by love. And so, the man's choice echoed across the galaxy, a choice that showed what it truly meant to be human, not obedience, not profit, but the courage to protect, the courage to love. The galaxy would remember his defiance. The widow and her daughter would remember his promise, and he would remember their eyes. The eyes that changed everything,